link to the notes page for this meeting into the chat in Meetico. And I'll add my name and the name of the other people I see here in Meetico. Some small but mighty group so far. And we'll give folks a few minutes to join. I have a feeling we're going to be pretty light today because we're in the immediate run-up to the IETF meeting. And our general rule about these meetings were that we were not going to hold them the same month as an IETF meeting, but since we're just 4 days away from the actual meeting, I have a feeling that we're kind of caught in the whirl of IETF meeting nonetheless. So yeah, so we'll just give a minute more. And again, our model here is the tools team call, and so folks are encouraged to share video if they're able, to make it as much like sitting around a table as possible, even though I think I'll see a lot of you folks next week pretty soon, so that's great. Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So, okay, with that aside, I think we're at 3 minutes after. I've added everybody's name to the, oh, Dhruv is here. Excellent, Dhruv. I'm adding your name to the participant list. Great. And yeah, so thanks for joining. This is intended to be very interactive and a roundtable, and the goal is to give an update on IETF LLCCOMMS, I should say, and just to allow an opportunity to ask questions about it, about what's going on, what we've been up to. I've assembled some notes here in the notes. I put it in. Okay, fantastic. I've assembled some notes, which I put a link to in the chat, and I'm going to be adding to it as we go along. If people have questions, feel free to jump in and add stuff directly as well. If the agenda or proposed agenda follows our usual format of some hot topics for discussion, and actually these hot topics are structured so that I actually do have things that I would like to discuss, and if we don't cover them here, and even if we do cover them here, I'll probably be asking other folks for input on them because they are sort of fundamental to some of the bigger projects that we're doing. After that, there's FYIs, and the FYIs are kind of short this time because I haven't written a lot of stuff down, but I'm happy to talk through the items, and then we can talk about anything we want to talk about as long as we want to talk. Is there anything that people would like to for sure cover that they don't already see in the agenda notes? And for Drew's benefit, since he's listening, I'll just say that under hot topics we have an update on journey map development, and also put a little more update about how the www.ietf.org website is developing, is playing out. So if there's anything in particular we want to discuss or people have questions about as an FYI, happy to add those now or later. Okay, fantastic. I counted to 6, so we'll just get along. We've talked about these user journeys for a while now. I went back and looked at my original notes after our last comms call, and we actually started work on these in 2021. They were a part of the initial strategic plan form of these anyway, that Jay submitted to the board when we started the LLC. And the idea here is that what we want to get to is a view of how people work through the IETF. And this can be repetition for a lot of you folks because you've heard this before, but just to recap, user journeys are tools. They basically take a select goal that a particular kind of person wants to accomplish, and then tries to map that out based on data that you collect and then that helps you understand where the gaps are. And previous editions of this call, we've noted that the three that we've identified. So just again, the caveat: it's not going to be comprehensive. Uh, they're selective by definition, and they're not going to cover every potential path. They cover sort of a high probability path for a particular kind of person trying to accomplish a particular kind of thing. The other characteristic of user journeys as opposed to like user stories in agile development is that they cut across different modes of interaction. So it's not like you're inside of an app and trying to do one particular thing in the app, or you're at a particular meeting and trying to do one thing. The idea of a user journey model is that it follows people across different modes of interaction, either websites or in person or email interactions. And that's both one of the strengths and kind of one of the difficulties of them, is because you have to take all of those different channels into account. So that they're a little less constrained than like user stories. So the three that we've talked about are ID author, and I went back and we had a online workshop in 2021 with a lot of people to collect some data about what that journey should look like. We had this ID author survey also in 2021, and then the other part of information that feeds into these things are on an ongoing basis is something like the ID submission statistics, which we get, how people, what kind of format people submit IDs, and those kinds of things, how often they, how many versions they do, how many new drafts they do, 0 drafts, and so forth. So before I get more into this, I should back up and say, really, I'd love to have any ideas about additional sources of data, and also the start and end points for this journey that we, each of them that we're talking about. So any thoughts you have about that? The ID author journey, again, we had this workshop, and so the start and end goal were pretty clearly defined in that workshop, which included Alice Russo, Carson Borman, I think Jenny as well, and a few other folks, just to understand, get perspectives on how we should approach this particular user journey. So, and then the next section here is that the initial, there's already been some work underway, obviously. There's this dedicated authors wiki, which did not exist 3 years ago or 4 years ago. We have an updated author tools site, which basically took over from tools.itf.org. The author tools site still, I think, needs some work to align with what we discovered in the survey and the workshop, and there are some issues that I've pulled for that. Yeah, so that's an example. Yeah, Laura, please jump in.
Sorry. So I have a question about basically who, I realize you're generalizing, but is there room for looking at specific people coming through these journeys? So what I'm thinking about is, say, someone from Sisters going through all these different things. And is that a different bent on that, or is it all rolled in?
Yeah, that's a great question, because one component about user journey that I did not mention, but is implied, is the concept of a persona. So that the idea is you have some sort of idealized person, it's really a model of a person that helps inform how you think about their journey. And that person can be, be extremely well defined or not very well defined. So it could definitely be that the person who is defined as an ID author has attributes of someone who participates in Sisters, or could be so well defined that you have a name for them and they absolutely do participate in Sisters. So So I guess the short answer is yes, they could be. But the key to scoping this approach is to come up with a single persona. So just like you can't have every single journey, you have to have sort of an idealized model of what the person uh, who's going through the journey uh, looks like not literally looked, but like
I
uh,
understand.
what their background is and what their motivation is and what kind of those kinds of things. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Uh, did you have an idea about like this? Is the idea that you?
Well, the things are all the topics, the three personas that you've identified are all things that the sisters are looking at.
Mm,
People who are new to IETF, people who want to submit an internet draft, and people who are interested in being working group chairs. And so it just occurred to me, because those are so similar to what they're looking at, that there may be some value in maybe separately doing a separate um, user journey for sisters in these areas. I don't know if that's something that's actually done or not.
yeah, I mean that's a great idea. So once we have the framework for the journey, like the goal, where they're starting from, what the goal is, maybe the milestones along the way, it might be really interesting to create a very specific persona that relates to the sisters group, and then see if there are different things that come out of using that persona in the work. Um, I skipped over this, but the idea that the utility of these kinds of this model is that um, it identifies gaps, issues, and opportunities for people trying to accomplish these goals, and it may be that the gaps, issues, or opportunities are different for someone for the persona with the persona that aligns with the sisters than whatever other generic persona we have developed for those. So yeah, it could definitely be a useful activity. Um, that is a good idea.
I have a clarifying question. Maybe I'm just not quite understanding all of this. Is the goal of these journey maps, are these for internal LLC use to better understand the user base? Or are we envisioning this as something that would be like posted publicly to help a new participant or a new working group chair, et cetera, like see what their potential paths might be?
Yeah, I think it's more of the former, though I wouldn't limit it just to LLC, just with the community. For example, the working group chairs, the new working group chair user journey would be something I think the ISG would be really interested in seeing. Obviously, they'd uh, be very helpful in terms of providing input to that. Um, I mean, there's no reason not to make them public, but uh, if the format that they take, if you were trying to provide a flow chart to say a new working group chair or an ID author, you wouldn't you would kind of adapt the information that you would use for the user journey into a different format because the user journey format is uh, yeah uh, yeah it has a lot of more info in it and yeah probably would be just confusing to someone who's actually trying to follow the path. So yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, I'm taking notes. Okay. Yeah, so if you see the notes, you can see the starting points and in terms of start, where each journey starts or is thought to start and what the goal is, um, and kind of some of the resources that have already been developed along those lines. Um, yeah, uh, I think that this outline is going to be further fleshed out and then visualized as the next step. I had in the last meeting said that we'd have something by ITF 121. I think that's still likely for each of these, but they'll just be starting points. The other thing to say about these, and I think I've said this before too, is that these are very much tools. So they are intended to be updated as you get more information and resolve gaps or get materials to fill gaps and things like that. I'm just going to stop again here to see if there are any other questions or suggestions. Okay, thanks. Yep. Then the second topic for discussion is I wanted to share was that we've really increased the pace of blog posts focused on the technical work of the IETF. I think if you look over the past year, probably up until September, a lot of the posts were either meeting related or administrative related, like, survey results published or, uh, um, just LLC related activities. And I think the goal here is to really get the public facing website to be more focused on the work of the IETF, because that's going to be the hook that brings in potential participants or is relatable to non-participants, which is what www is really designed to design for. Those are the audiences. So in the last month, we've had publications on the Green Working Group, the IABI AI Control Workshop, the WINSI Working Group, the WIT area, and the NEMOPS workshop call for paper. I was trying to see if the workshop isn't contained in NEMOPS, but it isn't. NEMOPS is, you need the workshop there. So that's actually a workshop as well. There are a couple of things that come out of this that I just wanted to flag, which is that all of these kinds of posts are super intensive. So we still have a few more, like there's one on L4S and there's another one on DNS. So developing these kinds of blog posts are super intensive. We've engaged a writer to help us with some of them, but the learning curve for people writing about the IETF is pretty steep. So she's still working on the second blog post. But anyway, I'm calling this out because it's getting the technical work out in public in a more broadly consumable way is definitely a focus of the next year or so, I think, and we'll have to engage outside resources to make it happen. So yeah, Laura, please.
Is there a roadmap for blog posts that you guys have been working with, or is this just what's really current at the moment?
There is an editorial calendar. Roadmap might be a wrong word. Were you going to say something, Cindy? No. Okay. But yes, as new things come along, we definitely pop them into that idea bucket of the editorial calendar. And this is where things like the listening in on the IESG telechats and observing the kickoff and wrap-up meetings at IETF 121, or at the IETF meetings in general of the IAB, IESGs, the hot topics meetings. Those are really helpful. There's another blog post here that I didn't list because it wasn't topic specific, but we do these new topics at upcoming meetings posts where they're also focused on the work of the IETF, but meeting specific. So kind of bridge the gap between meetings and technical work.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah. So related to that, and this again was mentioned last meeting, but we have a mock-up now. We're looking to really expand the technology section of the website. So you can see it's actually kind of cool. I didn't realize you can just cut and paste into HedgeDoc an image. If you take a screenshot, you can just drop it in there. That's nice. So this is what the new technologies or updated technologies section will look like. It adds a lot of links to things like blog posts that focus on technologies, but aren't really visible on the front page or easily findable. It also has a concept, though that's not well developed, of getting the idea of working group keywords. And this is the idea that people who work on the technology may not be able to easily find working groups that deal with that technology. So there's some work to be done, possibly including in Data Tracker, to make it easier to find things related to TLS, for example. Or I'm trying to think of an example of a working group name. Cindy probably knows this off the top of her head, that deals with this technology, but you couldn't tell it from the working group name itself.
I mean, there's so many examples. I'm actually really excited about this because often we get tickets to support at IETF.org with like really specific technical questions. Like we had one about some IPv6, IPv4 translation thing. And I'm like, well, clearly the Secretariat can't answer this. Let me look at working group charters and see which one I think I might be able to point them to. So this keywords thing, I'm super excited about.
Oh, fantastic. Great. So I've now remembered you as a resource to understand how we should do this. Yeah, so even things that are like are obvious to IETF insiders, like the fact that 6man is obviously where you go for anything related to IPv6, is not apparent because you have to know that 6 is shorthand for IPv6, and
the man is maintenance.
And that man is right. So anyway, I think this is just a really good example of the fact that IETF insider itis is a real thing and takes over very quickly once people start participating in the IETF. They know all the shortcuts and lingo, and anybody who's outside the IETF has a hard time figuring it out, even if they're motivated and technically savvy, or relatively technically savvy. So hopefully we'll start putting these kinds of Rosetta Stones in so that people can find stuff more easily.
I can see, Greg, this might be helpful too for people doing transcription and stuff, to be able to see that.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the more people that can use it would be better, obviously. I hadn't thought about that at all, so that's a good point. So the basic concept, just to drill down a little bit, basic concept is we have these technology section, which is similar to the current technology, where we have the concept there is that we have general areas. Like Roman just came up with a really great overview of the AI related activities in the IETF, which I would never even contemplated, but it actually turns out that it looks like there's a pretty convincing thing. But the technology section are like security and privacy. That's hot and generally understandable. And then you dig down and see what the IETF is doing in that general area, which may cut across multiple IETF areas. Then you have this technologies in action, and the idea there is it's more like vertical industry kinds of things, like online gaming or domain name system. And it's speaking to people who are from that industry, familiar with that industry. And then you have the technology groups area, which is very IETF centric. Again, areas as the IETF knows them, and then working group keywords, and probably a better label for that. But basically the idea of making what technologies are being worked on where in the IETF and which working groups anyway, a bit more visible. And then the last bit is just really, to be honest, just shortcuts to recent blog posts about IETF technologies, because those roll off the front page pretty quickly and then they're not otherwise findable. So I think that's all that I had to talk about on that. I'd love to hear any other ideas about how to make IETF work on technical areas more visible, more understandable. Like, for example, go ahead, Cindy. Sorry.
Oh, I guess so. You mentioned that listening in on the telechats and the pre and post IETF sessions that the IESG and IAB have is sort of how you like pick topics for these, like which technologies to highlight. Is there, so that gets you what the IESG thinks is important and like the current work running through, but I wonder if there are things that the community might be interested in that there may be, like, we may not know? Like, is there a way to, would it be beneficial to maybe do some sort of survey on what sort of technical topics should we be highlighting? Um,
So just see if I understand. So like the idea that you could put out a note, hey, if you think that there's some interesting work going on in working groups that you're involved with that might, and you'd be interested in writing a blog post, let me know. That kind of thing.
yeah, I mean, something like that. If we're looking for ways to, like, both highlight this information and, make sure that it's relevant, I think a good way to get people interested in it is to see if there are people that are interested in submitting something. Obviously, we might want, to employ that technical writer to help make it more digestible as a blog post, because we know that some of this stuff can get extremely technical, which I think is probably not necessarily the level of detail that we would want for this. But
yeah, there's actually a really good example of that. I'll put a link to it in the chat, where it was, I had never heard of it, but this ad hoc technology, which Stephen Farrell was very, very excited about. And there's another version of that, which is this thing called JSON Path, which Glenn Normington, whom I don't think I've ever met, was also very excited about, and both of them authored these posts. So that's actually a really good idea, actually, I think, Cindy. I'm going to put that down. Sorry. Okay.
Greg, would this be a place where, so for example, I think Miria's doing a presentation in Dublin on Sunday, summarizing something, some area of work for the IETF. Cindy's chuckling. Would this be a place maybe for some of that material to be summarized and made available? Or is that totally a different focus?
No, I think that's so it could be, but the thing that Miria was planning to do was a WIT area update, but it's not happening, I don't think, because it just couldn't come together. So it's not on the agenda.
I had not heard that. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's off the agenda. Cindy will obviously know, but
actually, all of this is very news to me. So the expression you saw in my face earlier was confusion.
oh my goodness. Okay. Wow. I'm actually going to mark this day down. Like Cindy didn't know something that I knew.
Oh, there's many things I don't know.
Yeah, but it hardly ever happens. Yeah, so the idea was to do a tutorial, and it's definitely true that the idea of restarting the tutorials, um, which used to happen more often, I guess, at the IETF meetings, has been raised and investigated, but it remains a challenge to actually organize them because of agendas and timing and all those sorts of things. It's not easy, it turns out, to do that. But yeah, the tutorial idea. Hey, Drew.
Yeah, hi, sorry. So I might have missed a little bit, I got dropped out when I was in the basement. But we are talking about the blog part right now, right? ITF blog.
Yes.
One thing which was like, one thing that we should clarify is whether we are doing this for internal ITF audience or for external. And somehow in our cases, we have done both. And in my mind, it's kind of fine. Like we can keep the otherwise website completely for external audience, but when it comes to blog, I think it can have dual purpose. Some of the information is for ITF, and sometimes, like, mailing list we have seen may not always been the right venue, and blog sometimes could be. And so I think we can definitely explore, and Cindy's idea of asking for inputs, maybe at working group chair list, is a pretty good idea. One thing which I was also thinking from an external point of view, we have been doing this ITF and news for a while now, and that could also be a good place for us to mine what are the other external people when they talk about ITF, what are the key technologies where things keeps coming up. So whether it is security, privacy, these days a lot of quantum things are coming in. So even when you were talking about itf.org/technology, could, and that's for an external audience, so could that be a place for us to look in past, what, where does the rest of the community outside, maybe more media focused, maybe that's not all the things that we want to do, but I thought, like, that could be an easy input for us to look into, that that's what people are caring about: security, privacy, maybe quantum. So some of those things we can add as well. But yeah, the current one is really stale, so something we need to definitely do there.
Yeah, those are all really good ideas. I'm just taking notes on them. Thank you for those. Great. Anything else on? So I'm hearing lots of positive feedback on expanding the technology section and some really good ideas. So I'll take those up. I think we're now to the FYI part of the agenda, which, again, as I mentioned at the start, is pretty slim this time in terms of what I filled out, and I'm happy to walk through some of this. I didn't really get a lot to put into it. The one thing is the annual report for last year was finally published after a long time. Actually, in my experience, it's one of those things that everybody thinks is important but isn't really urgent. And so I look back, and last year we also published the 2022 annual report in October. And I remember saying, oh, we're definitely going to get it done sooner this year, but we didn't. So, we don't have, I guess we don't have shareholder meetings that we have to actually put it out in advance. So I don't know, Debbie, maybe you and I should talk about if there's some deadline that we should manufacture to make sure this happens more timely.
Well, luckily, the audit this year will be at the end of February instead of being dragged out by the auditors into May. So that might help.
That would definitely help, though I have to say, last year, I think it was, for the 2022 report, I think it was, the lateness was partially driven by the fact that the financials were finalized. That is not the case this year. Debbie has no culpability with the lateness of the report. It's entirely in my hands. So the finances were done by, audit was done by the middle of the year, and it sounds like even earlier. So I'll take it as a challenge, Debbie. We'll see who can get the bits together quicker and who's waiting on whom.
I'm very competitive and I love deadlines, so that fits right into my wheelhouse.
I know you are, and I'm the same way. So we'll have a thumb wrestle. What else is going on? There's a lot of work being done on fundraising. I know by Jay and Stephanie. So we've been working to update materials on the website and not so much hard copy materials anymore, but material on the website to support that effort. I will say that there are a couple of announcements happening at 121 that are not exactly IETF announcements, but they nonetheless require communications coordination. So yeah, there are at least 3 of them that we're expecting next week. So over the last month, that's taken up some time as well. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I'm happy to provide, everything otherwise is pretty much going along. I'm happy to provide further updates or answer any questions if people have them. Okay, I counted to 12 that time. The other thing I'll note that related to not like not typical communications, but more organizational communications. And I just want to note that we opened registration, we meaning the Secretariat, who did a lot of the, or all of the back end work and working out exactly how to make it happen, opened registration for IETF 122 ahead of IETF 121 starting, and this is the first time ever in the IETF's history that a meeting registration has opened before the previous meeting has concluded. So yeah, this is something that was talked about a lot so that people could have more time to get things like letters of invitation and visas worked out. So hopefully it'll make it easier for people to participate who need those kinds of planning measures. And it's
Do we know if anybody's already signed up?
I think I looked yesterday, and I think there were at least a dozen people. We've already had our first fee waiver request.
Excellent.
Wow. And there hasn't been any problems with the system because it's new, you know?
I don't think so.
Fantastic.
There was one comment today about on a mailing list about some numbers being off, but I'm not sure exactly what was going on there. But yeah, yeah, and it seems very straightforward for someone like me who is mostly exposed to registrations that only don't require international travel. So when I sign up for or don't require things like visas or letters of invitation to get visas, but there's a lot of work that had to go on and thinking through that had to go on the back end, including developing an entirely new dashboard for participants so they could see the status of 2 meetings at once. So I guess I just, all by way of saying, there's a lot of work that the Secretariat team, Stephanie and Ryan and others did to make it possible, make it happen, even though it seems like a seamless, easy experience once you walk through it. So,
have there been requests for letters, for visa letters?
That I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, check. One thing which I remember from last time going to Bangkok was there was a letter needed from TH Nick, for instance, that they need to say that this is a conference and this is approved by a Thailand something. Then you can use your tourist visa as well to attend this thing. There was some thing, I can look that up from the last time. So I was just wondering whether we have such a letter, as that request ever came in from anyone. Anyway, I'll do some research and find that thing up as well from my last time I visited.
Yeah, they are still working on that particular letter. I think this is the link to the webpage. This is one of the details that had to be worked out, that make sure we have this visa and letter of invitation information available for all the meetings that have registration open. So, and since the information is different, yeah. In the spirit of the IETF, I think this is very much a trial. It's definitely a live registration, but we expect to work out issues. And the eventual goal at this point, if it works out, is to have a rolling 3-meeting registration window so that you could plan 3 meetings ahead. Yeah, so definitely expecting to learn something. I think that's all I had, and actually more than I wrote down for the FYI section. Is there anything else you want to talk about or discuss related to comms around the upcoming meeting, or perhaps anything else?
When is the photographer going to be present, Greg? Can you share that?
Oh, right. That's a good point. And I didn't mention this at the start of I just realized I didn't mention this at the start of the call, but of course this call is being recorded, as you can tell by the icon, and it'll be posted to the YouTube channel. Robert is always very good about mentioning that up front, but I think for us here, everybody here expects that to happen. So hopefully it's not a surprise. Let me know if it's an issue. You can contact me directly. To answer the question about photographer, and I apologize, I have loud noises, window open, loud noises, so let me know if it becomes problem. Great. We are going forward policy starting this year had been to simply engage a photographer at the first meeting of the year for IETF meetings. But given that we have these 3 announcements happening next week, and also some specific requirements for sponsorship materials for next year, we will engage a photographer during IETF 121, and he will be there on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. So there is a plan to cover certain things, and Laura, I can share to you the brief. Stephanie has the brief, and yeah, but he'll be there for those 2 days to cover the specific things that we have identified that need coverage.
Great. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Okay, I'm counting to 12 again now. I think we might be done. Yep, got to 12. So thanks to everybody for coming. I really appreciate it. And there's a lot of good suggestions and thoughts. I've captured those in the notes. If you take a look at the notes and see something missing, please add them. The YouTube video from this call will be posted on, well, the video from this call or from this conference will be posted on YouTube, and the materials will be available on Data Tracker probably after next week, to be honest. I'll have a chance to look at the notes again and get everything tidied up and submitted. So with that, I hope everybody who's going to IETF 121 has a safe trip, and if not, I will be sending out a note for the next version of this call, which will be in December. So we have next month off since it has an IETF meeting in it. So great. Well, thanks everybody.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, and we'll
You
see most
also.
of you soon.
Bye.